Hey, everybody. Welcome to the best in true crime podcasting. This is True Crime Tuesday, and we've got a great interview lined up for you today. Now, I want to make a mention. You'll get the entire interview. The only segment of today's show you won't hear is our Dumb Crimes, Stupid Criminals. Why? Because that's under Stitcher Premium. We want to make sure that everybody gets a chance to hear these remarkable interviews of these incredible true crime stories. But for only $5 a month, you can subscribe to Stitcher Premium. That'll give you the entire episode. That includes the entire interview you're about to hear, plus Dumb Crimes, Stupid Criminals, and every episode of Darkness Radio, the best in paranormal podcasting. All 1,000+ episodes commercial free. And if that's still not enough reason for you to want to subscribe, you don't just get True Crime Tuesday and Darkness Radio, which, let's face it, for $5 a month, that's pretty valuable. You get every other show underneath the Stitcher umbrella. That means hundreds of thousands of hours of your favorite type of podcast programming, commercial free. Nobody got time for commercials. So if you're interested, then make sure you go subscribe now to Stitcher Premium. Use code word Darkness Radio, all one word, Darkness Radio, for some deep discounts for an entire year's savings. Go do that right now. Take advantage of the special and be able to listen to Darkness Radio, True Crime Tuesday, and all of the other amazing programs across Stitcher's platform. Go subscribe right now. Sit back, relax, and enjoy this episode of True Crime Tuesday.
Hello and welcome. You're tuned into the best in true crime talk radio. This is True Crime Tuesday. I'm your host, Dave Schrader. Tim Dennis is out dealing with COVID, folks, so make sure that you keep Tim in your thoughts and prayers. Today we have an interesting aspect of the show we're going to discuss, the JFK Assassination Dissected, an analysis by forensic pathologist Dr. Cyril Wecht. He's back with us since President Kennedy's assassination in 1963 in Dallas, Texas. Medical examiner and lawyer Dr. Cyril Wecht has initially inclined to accept the official theory that one person alone was responsible for this crime. But as Dr. Wecht delved into the evidence with boundless curiosity and unprecedented access, he came to understand that America had instead suffered a coup d'etat at the hands of a rogue element within our own government. Nobody else has Dr. Wecht's up-close and personal experience in uncovering the facts behind this assassination. And now he's sharing it with the world in a brand new book co-authored by investigative journalist Donna Kaufman. This comprehensive book reveals Wecht's analysis of the case's forensic and medical evidence. And with his keen eye and sharp tongue, Wecht wields his scalpel on JFK's dubious autopsy report, the inept Warren Commission report, and the mishandling of crucial materials, all of the key players and the media malpractice that has allowed the truth to remain hidden for nearly 6 decades. We have a link for the book in today's program guide. Dr. Wecht, welcome back to the show.
Thank you. A pleasure to be with you. Thanks for inviting me.
Let's dive right into this. Getting into this, as it said, you were one to believe the original claims of this case. How quickly after that Warren report and the official claims did you really start to look in and dissect this case?
Well, it wasn't long. The assassination, November 22nd, 1963, and just a couple of years later, when I was assistant district attorney, medical legal advisor, the director of the laboratory, who had become a good friend of mine, invited me to give a talk at the American Academy of Forensic Sciences. He was one of the program chairs for that meeting, which was to take place in February 1965. And I went to our big library here in Pittsburgh, got the 26 volumes, finally found the autopsy report, and began to look into it. And the more I studied it, the more I realized how inept, how incompetent it was. That ineptitude, incompetence could be attributed directly to, as I came to learn, the fact that the two naval pathologists who did the autopsy, Humes and Boswell by name, at Bethesda Naval Hospital that evening on Friday, November 22nd, had never done a gunshot wound autopsy in their entire careers. Multiple gunshot wounds, differentiation of entrance and exit to be made, angle, range, trajectory, sequence, correlation then with the wounds in Governor John Connally, an extremely formidable task that would take a 2 or 3 team of top-notch forensic pathologists working together to put it together satisfactorily. And so here you have, in this great, marvelous country of ours, with all of the top forensic pathologists right there within the Washington, D.C. area, 1 hour drive or flying time, as well as career military forensic pathologists right there on the grounds of the Walter Reed Hospital at what used to be called the Armed Forces Institute of Pathology. All these people completely, deliberately ignored. So the more I got into it, and I realized then when I matched up what the doctors at Parkland Hospital, these 18 different surgeons working on the president talked about in terms of what they saw, the defects in the rear of the skull, the occipital region, the cerebellar tissue, that part of the brain which is located behind and below the cerebral hemispheres, being damaged extensively, and yet the pathologist that night doing the autopsy said that those areas were intact. So who do you believe? Those good old Texas boys who had examined hundreds and hundreds of cases over the years, or these two incompetents doing the work under the supervision and guidance of the 4-star admirals and generals sitting there in the autopsy room? And then later on, when I discovered the fact that the brain was missing, that the brain had never been dissected and studied, it had been set aside properly for 2 weeks, fixed in formalin to get a harder consistency, and then you go back and you slice it like a hard-boiled egg, which is what is done. They went back and they never dissected the brain. The brain was never examined, and the brain remains unaccounted for as we talk here today, 58 years later. And then you get into the single bullet theory, which they came up with because they had a seemingly impossible physical temporal incongruity between the test firing time of the Mannlicher Carcano, the alleged murder weapon, a non-automatic bolt-action piece of junk weapon. Every long gun expert has told me that. Timing with the Zapruder film, the film that was made by a gentleman named Zapruder, standing there at Dealey Plaza up by the grassy knoll, and that film studied showed that Connally was struck 1.5 seconds after Kennedy was hit, and it took the best marksman that the government could come up with 2.3 seconds from shot to shot. And that gave birth to the single bullet theory, which they said was a magic bullet, Commission Exhibit 399, that broke, that made 7 wounds in 2 men. 7 wounds in 2 men, destroyed 4 inches of Connally's right fifth rib, caused a comminuted, fragmented fracture of the distal end of the radius, one of the 2 large bones from the elbow to the wrist. And remember, Connally, 6'4", big bone Texan. You're not talking about a dainty little 90-pound woman here. That bullet emerged near pristine, a weight loss of only 1.5%, completely intact, a slight crimping at the base, the nose, the cone of this copper-jacketed lead core bullet, completely intact. And then when you trace its trajectory coming out of Kennedy's neck, it makes horizontal and vertical gyrations of multiple inches to come over to the right, slam into Connally behind his right armpit, go down through the chest, emerge below nipple level. Connally holding his Stetson hat at the shoulder level. The bullet emerges, hooks up and around a dozen inches, goes into the back of his wrist, shatters the radius, as I've said, and then proceeds into the left thigh, and somehow miraculously fell out without being seen by anybody else. A maintenance man at Parkland Hospital trying to get to the men's room, finding the corridor blocked, moved the stretchers, and lo and behold, there was this bullet. Commission Exhibit 399, the hero of the single bullet theory, labeled a long time ago by the critics as the magic bullet theory. So that tells you about this incredible falsehood, the ongoing conspiracy promulgated by top-level people in this country, not the Russians or the Chinese or the Cubans. We have met the enemy, and he is us. some active or recently retired CIA top military people. I don't know exactly who, and I don't know how many. I bet you that there weren't more 4, 5, 6 people who got together and said, this is what we have to do. We can't sit back and let 5 more years of John Kennedy, followed by 8 years of Bobby Kennedy. They saw America going to hell in a basket. They did not like it at all. Kennedy had vowed to get out of Vietnam, and he was pushing for all kinds of changes, a warming of the Cold War with Russia, and most importantly, following the Bay of Pigs debacle in Cuba, he said that he was going to destroy the CIA. Had a piece of paper sitting with Senator Mike Mansfield, majority leader at that time, tore it up into pieces and said, this is what I intend to do to the CIA. So there you have it. It was coup d'etat in America.
Well, Dr. Wecht, why not just destroy the credibility of the president, who was on drugs, dealing with Addison's disease, and cheating on his wife with Marilyn Monroe and other people? I mean, it seems like instead of murdering him, they could have taken him out other ways. Or did they need a murder? Well, did they need something to unify the United States and stand behind?
Yeah. Well, see, the problem with that is that it's going to take a long time, and it can't be guaranteed to be successful. And you're thinking, you see, as a sane, rational, decent human being, you might, say, well, how can I accomplish something without engaging in something as horrendous as brutal murder in a large city in broad daylight? It's a fascinating observation. You're right. All those things are correct. He was a womanizer. He had the affair with Marilyn Monroe. And I don't know if he was on drugs, somewhat, but the Addison's disease, adrenal insufficiency, you're right. Those are things are known. And interestingly, the news media knew those things too, and they never talked about it. And the news media had continued in a second conspiratorial cover-up in failing to report all the things that I've talked about. Many things we don't have time to get into, including the analysis of the acoustics evidence from Dealey Plaza that day, which was transmitted inadvertently by a police officer on a motorcycle, and that was studied by the top acoustics experts in the country, in Cambridge and New York City, and determined that shots were indeed fired from the rear and from the front. And the news media has ignored that and refuses to publish anything at all of a critical nature. I don't care who writes what book and what they have to say and what scientific analysis is out there. That's the way it's going to be. So I cover all these things in my book, the JFK autopsy, dissection of the JFK autopsy, in a clear fashion, not too heavily tendentious in a scientific way as to be overwhelming, and a lot of good background information, including my private meetings with Marina Oswald, Oswald's widow, and George de Mohrenschildt, this white Russian emigre, Texas oil man, who befriended Oswald and took him under his wing, and so on.
Do you believe, can I ask really quickly, Dr. Wecht, do you believe that Oswald was truly a patsy? Did he have a hand in any of this assassination, or was he the easy guy to hang it on?
I don't want to get bogged down in making this appear to be a posthumous, retroactive exculpation, exoneration of Lee Harvey Oswald, who was not a nice person. But based upon the bullet wound in the president's back and its emergence at an upward angle of 1.5 degrees from the throat, the angle, the trajectory doesn't fit in with Oswald's position in the 6th floor window. So I tend to believe that he indeed was a patsy, as all set up going back to his 2.5 years in Russia. Before that, his honorable discharge from the Marine Corps, based upon a fictitious story of injury to his mother, illness of his mother, and so on. I think Oswald, not to in any way paint him as a purely innocent person, but insofar as the actual shooting is concerned, I tend to believe that he was not a shooter.
How many shooters do you believe might have been involved in this with the actual evidence that you were able to see through the autopsy and the wounds that were created?
I believe there were 2 shooters. It's possible there could have been a third, but two shooters, one from the rear, maybe not from the Texas School Book Depository building, but from the Daltex building, which would line up better, and one from behind a picket fence on the grassy knoll. So 2 shooters. Could there have been a third one? I don't think so. We don't have any evidence of that. We do have a bullet that supposedly missed, but I think I'll stick with 2 shooters.
How did you discover the fact that Kennedy's brain was missing? And you know, there has to be some line of to follow for medical examiners. How can it just disappear?
I was the first non-government appointed, non-government related forensic pathologist given access to the autopsy materials in 1972. There was a cockamamie executive order that claimed all these materials, everything belonged to Jackie Kennedy. In April of 65, an inventory then in October of 66, I saw when I was down there, did not contain the box containing the brain, and so on. How I got in was that cockamamie, absurd executive order, the likes of which had never been promulgated previously or since, said that nobody could see these things for 75 years, with the exception that a recognized expert in the field of pathology with a serious historic purpose could apply. And finally, I got in. I was president of the American Academy of Forensic Sciences, president of the American College of Legal Medicine, coroner of Allegheny County, board-certified forensic pathologist, and so I applied. And after they jagged me around for a year, that's a long story, I finally got in. And that is when I discovered then that the brain was missing. Now, was I the first one to know this? Oh, no, many people. And this shows you the nature, the depth, the extent, the power of this conspiracy, that top-notch people, including, for example, someone who was my chief where I trained, Dr. Russell Fisher at the medical examiner's office in Maryland, where I did my forensic pathology training. He was a member of the Ramsey-Clark panel in 68. So these people all came to know that the brain was missing. And nobody ever said that the brain was missing, that the brain had not been examined. Nobody. Can you imagine getting away with something like that? And I don't know when it would have been announced. Maybe it would have been covered up completely. I don't know. So I take credit for that. August 24, 1972, page 1, New York Times, story by Fred Graham, President's Brain Missing. And as you and I talk here today, 58 years later, the anniversary just yesterday, that brain remains unaccounted for.
Could I ask you, Dr. Wecht, in what we do know from the Zapruder footage, from the autopsy reports, was it a kill shot? I was understanding he was still alive when he made it to the hospital. Could they be hiding the brain because he had survived and they ended his life?
Oh, no. The brain damage was extensive, as documented by the surgeons there at Parkland Hospital. Part of the brain had been blown away. Oh, no. Those injuries were incompatible with life. The bullet that entered his back and exited from the neck, that bullet might not have been fatal with proper immediate treatment, but the gunshot wound or wounds of the head indeed were fatal, and those injuries to the brain were irreversible and untreatable.
Do you believe that we're going to get an honest response from the government at the end of this 75-year kind of moratorium they have on releasing the information?
Well, I used to be optimistic maybe when I was younger, and I was hoping that one day. And when I see, though, after all these years, the way Trump finessed the release of all the records a year and a half ago or so, the way Biden finessed it, and now they keep talking about compromising national security by releasing information. I want somebody to explain that to me, how the Warren Commission report holding that one person, Lee Harvey Oswald, was responsible from beginning to end, how any documents about that would compromise our national security. So we'll see. In December 2020, Biden says that that's when he'll okay the release. We'll see what happens. This cover-up continues, and as I've already said, aided and abetted by the news media across the board, New York Times, all the way down. And if you can't break through with the government and you can't break through with the news media, then what the hell are you left with? What are you left with? Who's going to fight the battle? Who's going to open up the doors? And that, of course, is their problem, the government's problem. The moment you open up the door and involve a second person, you have, by definition of the criminal codes of every state and the federal government, a conspiracy. And that means then you have to conduct an investigation, and you'll see where those conspiratorial lines take you. And that is something that nobody wants to get into. To show that this was done by our government, by some people in our government, and it was covered up. This is heavy stuff. I think the American public...
Why do you think the government and the people are so complacent towards this when we're still trying World War II former guards of gulags and places where Jews were put to death? And these guys are in their high 90s. We're putting them to trial, but yet we don't want to, release this information because there are still some people involved in the case that are alive. Shouldn't they stand trial? Shouldn't they be a part of this
you bet
case?
your life. That's an excellent observation. I thank you for making it. That we're still going after people. I saw something too, where somebody in his late 90s is being arrested and tried. I think it's in Germany or wherever. And what's coming out now with the gulags in Russia that Putin is trying to cover up. But here in America, you see, the people are complacent because this is part of America, a great part of America. They're not really involved in an intellectual, probative fashion about these important things in America. And then the younger generation or two behind me, what do they know? They know the American history book that they studied in high school and college reports this as an assassination taking place at Dallas, Friday, November 22nd, 1963, shooting, Oswald arrested, and so on. They don't get into it. They don't discuss any of this at all in detail, as far as I know, and why and how. But, this is the political naivete, the political ignorance, I don't mean to be insulting, of a large mass of people in America. And yeah, you're right. We're still talking about things that were wrong in the Vietnam War and the
World War II.
Things in World War II, and yet this the most important murder of the history of the world, not only America. No other murder has gotten the attention that this did in that sense. No other murder was as important in determining the socio-political direction of this country and of the world. And I don't get off into politics, Democrat, Republican, liberal, conservative, but suffice it to say that 13 years, 5 of John and 8 of Bobby Kennedy, that would have been a lifetime. And these people saw America going to hell in a basket, and they weren't going to sit back idly and let that happen. And they did what they had the power to do, and what they had done in Chile with Allende, in Guatemala with Arbenz, in Vietnam with the Diem brothers, in Iran with Mossadegh, in Africa with Lumumba. They did what they felt was necessary to preserve the integrity of America. They did not like Kennedy's plan to warm up the Cold War with Russia, to pull out of Vietnam, to push for human rights and civil rights in America. They did not like that. And there was only one way to do it. They couldn't beat him at the polls. And getting back to observation you made about why didn't they just go after him for his moral conduct, I don't know how that would have sold. It didn't seem to bother people with Trump, who was nowhere near as nice a person and as beloved as Kennedy.
Right, but
and
that was a
even
different era, too. And I think because Kennedy was considered America's royalty, to have that carpet pulled out back then, when we certainly had, the country had a much different modicum of respect for each other and our neighbors, it seems that would have undermined a lot. And looking at that aspect, I wonder if that's why we don't get the truth now, is because this is built upon such a shifting, sandy base that if we reveal this, what other secrets are truly entwined in our history that will become revealed?
Well, sure. That's a very good point. That's a very good point. It doesn't necessarily end with the uncovering of the truth in the JFK assassination. What are the ramifications? What are the tentacles that flow out from the head of this monster? That's a very good point. So these people, including the political titular heads at both sides of the political spectrum, Trump and Biden, and they're covering up. Why not just release it then? If there's nothing there, release it. What the hell are you afraid of?
When you were looking through the files yourself, was there much redacted, or was it completely unadulterated access to that information?
They did release some stuff, but there's a lot of information that has not been released, that has been redacted. And so one can only engage in conjecture as to what is there. Obviously, there's something of significance of a very disturbing nature, right? I think we can reasonably infer that without engaging in wild conjecture, that obviously there's something there that is very disturbing. Otherwise, it would have been released.
What was the most surprising aspect of the research that you did in this? Obviously, finding out the brain was missing and that you kind of had some incompetent...
Yeah, well, I would say that was the single, if you want to, prioritize, so to speak, I would place that as number one. The failure to examine the brain, the failure to have disclosed that information, the cover-up by foremost scientific people in this country in the field of forensic science and pathology and investigation and government levels, not disclosing that, and the fact that the brain remains unaccounted for 58 years later, that by is number one. Number two would be the total ineptitude, incompetence, and experience of two pathologists doing this autopsy. Our president, multiple gunshot wounds, like I've said before, okay? In no country of the world, you look it up, where a president, a king, a prime minister has been assassinated, where the autopsy has not been done by the top medical legal people in that country. You find one situation like that, and yet here in our great, powerful, wonderful America, we see that happening, that autopsy being done by two guys who had never done a gunshot wound autopsy. That's number two on the hit parade. And number three, the background of Jack Ruby and Oswald. Ruby just fortuitously coming down at the precise moment into the Dallas Public Safety Building when Oswald is being let out, and conveniently eliminating him, because there's no damn way in the world that Oswald was going to go to trial and talk about all of these things, you can be sure.
It's fascinating that all these years later, 58 years later, there's still such a wanton desire to understand this story.
Oh, there sure is. There sure is. And that's why I welcome the opportunity with somebody like you as an intelligent, knowledgeable host to talk about this and to, mention my book. Not here to sell books, but I really think anybody with interest in the Kennedy assassination, in justice in America, in politics in America, and modern times, and what it means today, will find this book, the JFK dissection of the JFK autopsy, extremely interesting. It's available through McFarland Publishing Company now, directly from McFarland, or it can be obtained by mail order from Amazon and Barnes & Noble for another few days or a week or so. You would place the order, you get the book. I recommend it. It's interesting reading, and I think talking about a lot of things, including my meetings with Marina Oswald and DeMorenshield and the people who headed up the legal side of the House Select Committee on Assassinations, attorneys Dick Sprague and Bob Tannenbaum. You'll find some wonderful information there.
If I could ask one final question on this, is
yes, go ahead.
Reviewing these files, looking at the medical examiners, as you said, you pointed out the fallibility of these two guys that really had no business doing this. If you are running this incredible gambit, this this coup d'etat to take out the president, do this, wouldn't it have made more sense to have the top people that you probably had control over to handle this so that there wouldn't be these watermarks that are easy to examine and realize, why are these guys doing it instead of these guys?
Oh, but that's the point, David. That's the point. You can't control top forensic pathologists in New York City, Boston, Richmond, Philadelphia. There's no way you're going to control them. They would not have put their reputations, their life work at stake. Oh, no, they could not be controlled. But career naval pathologists could be controlled very easily. 4-star admirals and generals and government officials could control them. But that's why. Oh, no, that point you make. But your conclusion, I must respectfully disagree. These people were deliberately ignored because they could not be controlled.
That's fascinating. I wonder if they've ever taken it to the level of looking at these examiners' records financially and see if there's suddenly this gain in finances or...
Well, I have no reason to believe that it was money involved with these people, military control and power. A government is a lot more effective than just some money. I know I never have thought about that, and I have no reason and no basis to say that. Well, I want to thank you so much. I want to extend my best wishes for the Thanksgiving holiday to you and all your listeners. I appreciate the opportunity to discuss this with you, and I hope that my comments will open up the door and open up the eyes of people and make those who still believe in the Warren Commission report have a better understanding of why it is absurd and extremely naive for anybody to believe the Warren Commission report.
I agree. Thank you so much. We do have a link up for the book, The JFK Assassination Dissected, an analysis by forensic pathologist Cyril Wecht, is available on today's program guide. Dr. Wecht, happy Thanksgiving to you and your family.
Thank you very much. Thanks.
We hope you enjoyed today's program of True Crime Tuesday. And remember, if you'd like the full episode with the dumb crime, stupid criminals aspect, all you have to do is go over and subscribe now for Stitcher Premium. Use code word Darkness Radio, all one word, to get some deep discount savings for your 1-year subscription. And it will give you access to all of our archives from Darkness Radio. There's over 1,000 episodes up and available, and more being added constantly. You get all of the episodes of True Crime Tuesday, and you get all of the other great programs that are part of Stitcher. Hundreds of thousands of hours of programming for $5 a month, commercial free. You can't beat that, so don't even try. Go subscribe now, and remember to use keyword Darkness Radio for those key savings.